Hello, and a very warm welcome to this Lead Dev webinar. I'm Michael Hill. I'm the managing editor of Lead Dev, and I'm really excited to be moderating this panel on the topic of AI's impact on software engineering. So, a really timely and important topic, but also one that's kind of moving and changing a lot. So, very excited to get into this. Also, very excited to say that in this session, we will be announcing and discussing some of the key findings from our upcoming AI impact report, which is due to launch in just a few days. So that's our latest piece of research. So by joining today, you're actually gaining a sneak peek of some of the newest data that we have coming out of our research team. So yeah, very excited indeed. I'll just run through a couple of bits of housekeeping first before we get into the really good stuff. So you can use the chats function to submit any comments that you have regarding the discussion on the topic. And you can also use that to submit any questions that you've got for our panel. And we'll do our very best to answer any questions that come in before we wrap up today. There's also 3 poll questions that I will be launching shortly. They're multiple choice questions, no right or wrong answers, but we're very keen to get your input on those. And again, we'll be looking at the results of those and discussing those before we finish up too. Okay, so let's get down to the really good stuff then. Delighted to be joined by a fantastic panel of speakers. What I'm going to do is just quickly ask each speaker to introduce themselves and just share a little bit of background as to who they are and what they do, and then we'll dive into our discussion. So Dan, I'll come to you first.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Michael. My name is Dan Moore. I'm the Senior Director of SIAM, Customer Identity Access Management, Strategy and Identity Standards at FusionAuth. And in that role, I spend a lot of time looking at the broader ecosystem and problems of identity, which, in the last couple of years has grown to include agents and agentic development. So I'm super excited to discuss this survey and the findings and talk with the other panelists.
Great stuff. Thanks, Dan. Good to have you here with us. And Tiffany?
Hi everyone, my name is Tiffany Jagcha, Senior Manager at Yahoo. I lead a couple of different teams under the news org, mostly focused on apps and a lot of the agentic features that you see both on web and apps.
Great stuff. Thanks, Tiffany. And Jerome?
What's up, everybody? How you doing? I am the executive director of Vets Who Code. What I do is that I train military veterans and spouses the world over how to break into software engineering or artificial intelligence engineering. Now going from the entire zero to full stack software engineer. So far, I've helped over 300 veterans and in the past 12 years doing upwards to $20 million in salaries for the United States economy. So I'm happy to be here.
Great stuff. Thanks, Jerome. Yeah, big thanks to all 3 of you for being here with us. Okay, I'm going to launch the poll questions now, leave those running for a good amount of time. So they should be going live now. You should be able to see those on your screen. There's 3 poll questions. You're obviously free to answer as many as you wish, but please do, don't be shy, take part in them. And yeah, we're really keen to get your input and look forward to looking at the results of those later. But I'll leave those running for a good length of time to give people a good chance to take part in those polls. Okay, let's get down to some of the findings from the AI impact report then, and then we'll kind of build out our wider discussion. So just a few that kind of stood out to me. I was part of the team that built the survey and actually have authored the report. So I'm excited for us to launch it. But just with regards to AI adoption of AI powered tools, and by AI adoption, I'm talking here widespread adoption, so either adopted widely or completely across engineering teams. That was up to 70% this year, which has climbed from 36% last year. So nearly double there with regards to teams that consider themselves having adopted AI-powered developer tools either widely or completely across teams. I thought that was a really interesting finding. Some really interesting stats around productivity as well. 25% of respondents say that AI powered productivity has boosted. Sorry, 26% of respondents say productivity has increased by more than 25%. That's more than double the 12% who said the same last year. When you add another 21% who report gains of between 11 and 25%, it means nearly half of engineering leaders are now seeing double-digit productivity improvements. Only 9% said that AI has made their teams less productive, which was about the same as last year, interestingly. But which sounds great, really. You look at those productivity data and you think very promising findings indeed. We also found that only 31% of orgs currently measure the impact of AI-powered developer tools. That is up from 18% the previous year, so a significant climb. That's a good progress there, but it still leaves more than two-thirds of orgs operating very much on gut feel. Almost half, 48%, did say they're currently exploring how to measure success. I guess it's a polite way of saying nobody's built the dashboard yet, right? But yeah, certainly seems to be where attention's looking towards for the future, but not necessarily there yet. But let's get into the discussion here with regards to metrics. And I'll just finish off on one final data point before we do. Token usage was the most common AI metric that was used among those that are using it, 58%. However, almost all of those said it's ineffective for gauging AI value. So Dan, let me come to you first on this, topic of token maxing, was the buzz phrase a couple of months ago, but, measuring tokens as a proxy of productivity output. I think the bubbles burst quite quickly with that. But what's your thoughts on that? And actually, what do you think realistically teams need to be measuring for, to do that effectively?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, the token maxing, episode basically reminds me of the drunk looking for the keys under the light, even though they lost them way outside of the light because that's where the light was. People are measuring it because it can be measured. And what I would say is that the right thing to do is actually start tracking with what you were doing previous to AI. And I'm sure everyone on this call or on this webinar was, right, tracking very precisely exactly software productivity. I'm joking about that because it's a notoriously hard thing to track, but frameworks like Dora, Space, or even kind of team health metrics like sprint velocity speed are a really good place to start because in my mind, AI is this amazingly powerful tool, but is just another tool in the software development lifecycle. So I don't know if you need special AI metrics to track. If you do need something special, especially around adoption, then I would start with an anonymous survey of devs and ask them directly how much AI are you using rather than try to do something like tokens, which can be gamed so easily.
Mm. Yeah, great stuff. Thanks, Dan. Tiffany, anything you want to add there with regards to what you see, any kind of lessons learned in terms of, trying to track and measure this
Yeah,
stuff?
a lot of the measure conversations makes me think of, that scenario where you're a customer and you go into a store and you're like, okay, I want the best burger for at the fastest in the fastest time at the cheapest price. And you can only like the scenario is you can only pick two out of three. And so that's kind of how I look at it when I'm managing teams. It's like we can't ask for everything, right? It's just too much to ask for everything. But with AI, you have a lot of opportunities to kind of min-max some of those things. You're able to move a lot faster, right? And so it helps you then understand, like, if you're looking at those three kind of areas, like how much faster are we moving? And maybe you want to look at like, quality, or maybe you want to focus for a particular time, a period of time, you might want to look at like quality and costs, right? Like, and costs, you can break that down even further. It can be token usage or costs of operating or using AI, that tool, or it can even be amount of effort that a developer is doing. Is that sustainable? You can look at that and project that and say, all right, we use this many tokens, this amount of time to produce these results at this quality. This gives us a runway of this amount of time, right? And then this was the amount of effort. Is that also sustainable? Can I talk then, kind of applying what Dan was saying, you can then check in with your developers. Hey, like, how are you feeling? Is this good? Is this not good? Maybe token usage really low for an engineer, but their output's really good. That helps you have the conversations and kind of frame it in a different way. And so that's kind of the mental model that I have. I'm like, all right, like, let's not try to focus on everything, because if you try to measure everything, then you're sort of measuring nothing, right? Like, pick two of those areas, tie it back to your organization's larger goals, and see where you're moving the needle. And I think that gets people a lot further than, just sticking to one sort of view or trying to measure everything at the same time.
Yeah, great points. Thanks, Tiffany. And Joan, I'll just come to you quickly on this before we move on to the next point. On that metrics piece, I mean, What's your thoughts? Do you think obviously the growth of AI coding, right? Do you think it's broken some traditional metrics, and do you think that's part of the challenge and people are still don't know what to measure effectively? Do you think there's still kind of a lot of question marks over or confusion over what they should be doing or
I mean, not yes and no, right? So some of the data points you brought up, right? 70% of the engineering teams are saying productivity, but only 25, 7% of them are using AI, but only 25% of them, 26% see 25% or more, right? So that is over 50% of that AI usage or AI users. They don't just see like kind of a lot of great strength from. So and then that goes back what other companies are saying, where only 20%, 26% of the companies on average of the company is doing really good AI quality AI work. So first we have a differentiate what is quality UI work so we can even decide what to measure. Velocity is a great way, as well as bugs, because we want to see what bugs are going to introduce into our code bases now that we're leveraging these tools. And people focus too much on the productivity part of AI and not enough on the quality gates, the quality component, and the why. Sometimes you have a person that's not using AI on your team. I'm seeing this more and more often because of geopolitical reasons. That they're like, I'm not doing this because of what I've heard from, what it's doing to our industry or what it's doing to the environment, things like that. And you have to navigate those processes, right? So you have uh, I've seen on in several occasions where you have boomers and doomers, and then doomers are paired with the boomer, and you're like, okay, how do we fix this? Where you have two people working together, and one person won't touch it, and the other person loves it, and like be able to triage that relationship. So there are a lot of more nuanced things that are happening on the org level beyond, just hey, let's see, tokens go boom, right? Let's see who can, get up on the scoreboard. And we've seen, like I said, it can get gained. Like if 70% of the org is using uh, AI, but only you seeing a 25% gain, um, people clearly are just token max and just using AI for all the things, including things that they don't need to use AI for.
yeah.
So,
Okay, great stuff. Thanks, Jerome. Thanks for some really interesting points there on metrics. Let's shift things over to costs. We had some interesting kind of financial related findings in the survey. So I'll just run through a couple quickly and then get a couple of thoughts on them. So um, efforts around or focus on infrastructure costs and ROI tracking have doubled compared to last year. So this isn't saying that costs have doubled, but the focus and the efforts around them have doubled. With regards to infrastructure costs, that's jumped to 37% from 20. And with regards to tracking ROI, that's jumped from 14% to 36%. So a clear sign that finance departments have kind of entered the AI conversation and pushed measurement discipline beyond vanity metrics like token counts, if we can say that. So Tiffany, what's your thoughts on things that can be done to kind of bring down the cost of AI? And I guess this cost implication, particularly when we're looking at the cost of tokens and things like that, as people are using more tokens, it's become quite a big part of the conversation now, hasn't it, in terms of what engineering teams have access to with AI and what they can do, and having that discussion with the kind of finance side of the business.
Yeah, I would say that if you're even at the point of having conversations with finance, you should absolutely already have a dashboard or two. Like it's just this conversation is not going to go well without one. One of the things that we've been able to do, or that I've been able to do in a lot of regards, is offset a lot of the sort of like early costs to AI that we're doing as a sort of a conversation around investment, right? Like if you don't learn how to use the tool, you're not going to get good results. And so there is a ramp up period where, you have to look at it from a business perspective of like, do I want to invest with building with AI, or am I just not willing to do that? And what is the budget around that? Like, have the conversation around what is the quota? What is that? Because engineers will absolutely be able to game it and figure it out, right? Like, I love my team for being able to just say, like, hey, should I be worried about these token costs? Should I not be? And like, what phase are we in? If it's phase one and we're doing the investment, it's the investment period, then yeah, go at it. Try Opus, try Fable, try fast mode, see what you get as a result from it, even if it costs more tokens. Maybe it's 5 times more token, right? Like I put my model on fast mode sometimes because I'm like, all right, I got a meeting, I gotta go fast. Like we're not, we're in this period of time where we look at AI as an investment, and so go ahead. Other times you can also have something like a enterprise plan set up. One of the reasons why I don't mind using fast mode more often than not is because there's a certain quota that you get billed a certain percentage, a certain amount, and if you go over that, they'll of course like charge you at a different kind of rate. But as long as you're under that amount, it's either you used all of it or you didn't, right? And so I'm coming up at the end of the month. I know, like, hey, I just have a lot of stuff that I need to finish, but I'm also like under a certain amount. I'll just go at it. I'll use the best model, and I'll have it run for a lot longer. And so that's something that's been really nice. The other thing that I've noticed is as you're building new solutions, or maybe you're even trying to rebuild solutions from the ground up, you get an opportunity to consolidate tech stacks. And that's led to a lot of savings as well. You might have a data store that's sort of a subset of another data store. In some instances, AWS spend is $3,000, $4,000 a month, and that's just for the data store. And so in a lot of regards, we've been able to offset the costs. Like we're like, hey, our AI spend is this much, but if we're able to deprecate this system or fold it under another system, then our net costs are, this much. And that conversation's always gone really well. And for me as a manager, I always see that that's like part of the responsibility is having some of those more financial discussions. You wouldn't, and use your team to support you as well. But I think that's it's definitely a line of work that a manager or director would want to kind of take up for their team. And so figure out how you want to track that, figure out how you want to have the conversation around that. Those are some of the things that I've personally been able to use, and that's helped me a lot.
Yeah, cool, great stuff. Thanks, Tiffany. Another finding I want to touch upon, and maybe Dan, this is perhaps one to come to you on. This is regards kind of managing agent identity, right? With these tools which are becoming more and more autonomous. We found that 25% of orgs haven't addressed agent identity and access at all. 24% just reuse human credentials. Interesting findings, I think. I mean, what's your take on on that, and when it comes to the increasing use of AI and agents, what does good identity management actually look like now? How can leaders kind of manage that and keep on top of it?
Sure. Yeah. When I saw that finding, I confess I was scared. I wasn't exactly surprised, but I was definitely worried. I think that agentic coding has some really nice constraints and boundaries. Containers, pull requests, human gates, or those other quality gates that Ken and Jerome alluded to. When you reuse human identity, you have trouble auditing, you have trouble scoping down privilege. You can't differentiate different permissions. So I think a lot of people understand the problem, and it's a lot easier to talk about the problem than it is to talk about the solution. From my perspective and FusionAuth's perspective, there's kind of three big pieces. Agents need their own identities. Don't ride on human identity. Make sure that you separate that out. Then you need to make sure that you scope that privilege down for that identity as much as you can. And I understand that this is a source of friction because the whole point of agents is that they can act autonomously as well. So the thing is that when you have that narrow scope that is enforced by deterministic systems, that does narrow the blast radius. So the last thing is that you really want observability that is agent specific. And that again ties back to identity. So you really need those three things. You need the separate agent identity, you need least privilege, and then you need observability and auditability.
Mm. Yeah, great stuff. Thanks, Dan. And Jerome, we were talking just before we came on the air, right? About this wider security equation and how it fits into software engineering teams and how that's shifting with AI. And what's your take on that? I mean, security is so highly important, but we're talking about things like access management. I think you described it not necessarily the most kind of sexy topic for people to be thinking about when they've got these flashy kind of AI agents that they can use to build stuff, right? But incredibly important for teams to be doing this before the big incident happens, right?
Exactly. So we live in a world right now where, this type of conversation doesn't get you the CFPs for the big orgs. However, or the big conferences, but this is absolutely the type of stuff that you're gonna lose billions of dollars, right? We are seeing it at the Frontier Labs where they're not even giving their agents to their access to the internet, and they're still breaking out and breaking through. So just imagine when you're not provisioning AI agent or agentic security identities correctly, what's happening, what are these agents getting access to, what PII they're getting access to, what business data that they are not supposed to be able to see they're getting access to, what is the least level privilege that they're supposed to have that you haven't thought about as a leader, right? I work very closely with a lot of governments, a lot of public sector, a lot of dual use, a lot of defense organizations, and they have to think about this because it's scary stuff that they work with. You don't want um, if you're in a lab that focuses on making sure that germs or different viruses and things are, eradicated and safe, you don't want that information getting stolen accidentally or siphoned off of the data by rogue agent that was looking at just decided to peek over the fence while doing its work. But that happens all the time. So we have to um, treat this like a first class citizen now rather than later, because that's essentially what's going to happen. It's going to get worse before it gets better, unfortunately, which is a good thing for Fusion Off and Dan. But for the rest of us, we have to start treating. We have to, as a industry, as in leadership, we have to start treating this as a first class citizen now.
Mm. Great points. Thanks, Jerome. Just a reminder that we have got 3 poll questions live. So if you haven't voted on those yet, do get your votes in. A big thank you to everyone that has voted. I'll leave them running for a little bit longer. I'm going to just shift here quickly because we've had a couple of questions come in. I think it'd be good to kind of round those off as soon as we can. The first one comes from Matt. So thanks, Matt. He was referring to what we were speaking around earlier with regards to metrics feeling too local, constrained to engineering metrics, but not end-to-end performance. Shouldn't stakeholders notice a speed up or quality increase? Have any of you been able to track that? Interesting question. Don't know if anyone has any thoughts on that, Jerome?
I can go for that. So what I have been focusing on is one of my pieces of work is AI LLM enablement, and I've been focusing a lot on the creating of the proposal and requirement gates needed to ensure the quality of the product based on the SDLC. So that is something that we can literally use when here's the repo, it's in the repo, you all can pull it locally or you can pull it globally. We can see based on those we already have it installed, and we can, when they're working with their agent, we can see those improvements go. So we're able to, when you're leveraging harness engineering or whatever new engineering that they're calling, which is just, the documentation we should have been doing for people years ago. When you're doing it that way, you will see be able to start tracking that, but you still have to do that extra work to create the graphs, the harnesses, the agents, the skills to be able to do that. So that I see a lot. This has happened a lot now, where the people are standing teams up adjacent to the orgs that are already there, and having them take those documentation, interview the orgs, do those best practices, and build and scaffold those resources up to ensure that they can add to the productivity and performance of the engineers without taking the current engineers away from the work. So,
Yeah, Great stuff. Thanks, Jerome. Really great points made there. And yeah, thanks for the question that came in. Another interesting one here, and I'm gonna read the question, then I'm gonna tie it to another one of our findings actually, because it links up quite nicely. So um, cost and measurements are certainly important, but are you noticing any major changes in engineering team structures? For instance, smaller teams, teams with a broader scope, no human PR reviews, the need to rewrite leveling frameworks or other significant shifts. Tiffany, on that note of kind of team structures, engineering teams, I've read pieces about engineering teams getting smaller in this kind of AI age. Obviously roles changing, and even management and leadership roles changing quite a bit to get more hands-on and technical. But just generally, what have you experienced, or what are your thoughts on how teams are changing and adapting in the kind of modern AI era?
Yeah, it's certainly becoming more cross-domain agnostic. You have someone who would traditionally mostly focus on client-side changes, now making back-end changes, back-end engineers working more on front-end code. That certainly happened a lot across the teams that I've managed and that I've seen. Smaller teams that are able to do more, and then just more teams as well, because you have these, larger teams that get them broken up, and then now they have their own kind of lane of focus or focus area. Maybe they're building a new product line, maybe they're building a new platform, as some of the panelists had mentioned. Those are some of the things that I've noticed. It's also interesting to see like how you also change the code review process. Before you might have like a heavier one where it's like, all right, we have one mono repo. There are three different teams that are kind of, focused on contributing to this mono repo. We need everybody to, we need code reviews from everybody if, these files are changed. Now, a lot of times teams are using Claude or Copilot to check and do PR reviews. So
Mm,
that's changed a lot. Someone had mentioned guardrails in the chat. um, Harness engineering has changed a lot of the ways that we work. We're putting in guardrails, we're putting in hooks, we're injecting non-deterministic workflows into our more, agentic workflows, making sure that there's extra tests, making sure that there's auto healing. You might have already set up an observability dashboard. You're tracking all the nines, crash free rate. You're tracking, the typical quality metrics that you would otherwise. And then as you're deploying, you get to see how those numbers change over time. And let's say monitor trips, right? Someone's getting paged, you now have the ability to kind of build that out where it doesn't have to be an engineer waking up at 1 o'clock in the morning trying to solve it. A couple of my engineers have set up a couple of Claude skills so that when they do get paged, it triggers a job, a kickoff investigation. And so, it might take them 15 minutes to get out of bed and wipe their eyes. And by then, Claude will have done a preliminary investigation that they can then use to triage or dig in deeper, try to figure out what's going on. So those are some of the changes that, you can look at it and say, oh, that's a negative or a positive, but at the end, they kind of nets out. But those are some of the things I've noticed.
yeah. Great stuff. Thanks, Tiffany. And yeah, the data point that I wanted to cite, which is linked to this, with regards to plans for hiring junior engineers. So 62% of those who took the survey expect to hire fewer junior engineers directly because of AI. Jerome, obviously you do a lot of work, with Vetsu Code in terms of getting people, into the industry, shifting across from one to another, and people of any age who are stepping into the industry for the first time are junior engineers, right? So, what's your take on that? I mean, you see that and you think, what do you think that means for the kind of future pipeline and opportunities for junior engineers to get into the industry?
Well, first and foremost, I don't have the data in front of me, so I always look at the context because I deal with multiple industries. I know that the more civilian friendly, um, side of the companies, like I could say Google. Hold on. The civilian side, yeah, I understand that's what you're thinking. The public sector side, not so much because of that level of that requirement level of work needs a more human touch, right? So we're seeing this divide that to the point now where in America, they have a saying called "LARP is the new thing." So they're saying Lockheed, Anduril, Raytheon, Palantir is the new thing in America because they're hiring juniors and early stage people the way Fang used to hire. And um, I think that is going to create a problem as people start retiring. One, or once your senior talent start moving, right? Um, you can't replace the people. AI can't replace people the way that people think they can. Even when you put all of these stopgaps and things, like we're just not seeing the uh, the metrics that say that you don't need juniors. So the harsh, that's just the reality that we're facing when I'm working with companies. I'm like, we don't have that evidence. So what I've seen with leaders that are doing this is, oh, you haven't changed your process of mentoring and training of juniors. You're still doing the bug hunt type thing where you're triaging bugs and stuff instead of what we've been implementing is we use code review duty to do knowledge transfer. So because that seems to be the biggest blocker when we go to companies is, hey, our seniors can do way more code than the juniors, but we are still getting blocked because we want a human in the loop on the code. I'm like, you put all the juniors on the code, make them read the code, make them ask questions. And we've seen in 6 weeks, the juniors are able to go from code review to doing PRs and doing work almost as good as the mid-level people because they understand the AI tools and they've been literally paid to ask 1,000 questions before they review, approve a PR. So that is one of the processes that we've done where we're having where people when they're focused on doing things the way as much as the way they've always done it, they're usually the ones saying, oh, we don't see ourselves hiring juniors. But then we're like, oh, well, you have all these little things like who's building your harnesses, who's doing the research for your harnesses. In my team, I got a text message that I was not looking forward to while here is that, hey, when you come back, there's going to be 4 people, 4 juniors with you, and your job is going to be, they're going to be helping you with documentation stuff as you're doing as harness engineer. And I'm like, thanks, thank you. But that's what they're needed for, right? As we're doing this important work, I need them to do the stuff so I can focus on the stuff that I'm good at. I need them to do the stuff that is too tedious, too data intensive, too needs more human eyes on it, so they can help me, and I can do a knowledge transfer with them. People aren't looking at their systems like that, and we need more training on the senior and leadership side and looking at these gaps in that way versus saying, hey, AI can do the bugs. Because yeah, AI can do the bugs for there today, but what about the stuff that you're trying to make sure that the bugs tomorrow don't come? What are we talking? We're talking about gating of AI agents on this call earlier. And all right, who can do that research? The team that's too busy doing 80 PRs a day, that's not those seniors. They're not going to do that research. So here's an opportunity for the talent that you're thinking you're not going to hire to do help you with that research. So
Jerome, I had a quick question about that, and I know Michael, we can move on, but like when you said the juniors or the newer developers are doing code review, obviously I would assume there's linters and other guardrails, and then there's also probably an AI code review first. But like, can you talk, for 30 seconds or a minute on like what that code review process looks like? Because the idea of saying, here's our least experienced engineers, we're going to have them be part of that quality gate is a really interesting thing to me because sometimes new eyes provide a lot of insight and sometimes they're going to miss stuff. So can you talk a little bit about that process?
well, of course, one, they're using Copilot. They're using the AI tools we have. They have the gates. We're building. We build in like in Mexico. We have harnesses to do reports. Once the PR is coming through automatically, that's attached to the PR that wants to get merged in. That report doesn't get merged into the PR, right? So they're able to do all that stuff. And after that, we're able. Our mandate is ask as many questions as you can. No questions too dumb. If you don't understand it, ask. If you want clarity, ask if you want to see like what does this have, and we have a list, right? Like, okay, teach them how to think beyond the scope of just the ticket to how this ticket will affect other work in the future, things of that nature. We're, that whole time we are creating a process to not only teach them about our code base, but teach them how to think, right? Because that's one of the things. So one of the things we've learned, one of my favorite books, the first book that especially this year, I recommended it to everybody, is to read The Programmer's Brain. We have been trained to think that engineers, they spend all their time, beep booping on the computer writing code. Well, actually, 60% of our time is reading code. So the highest ROI for a junior is to read someone else's code and ask 1,000 questions, and then turn around and be like, oh, so understanding how we are thinking as we're going through the process, it downloads into them, and they go and it starts showing up in their work. We've seen an experiment, 6 weeks of that. They're performing near the level of people who've been on the team in the code base for 6 months, just because they've had to read so much code, right? 6 weeks of reading code and improving it, and being able to ask people smarter than you questions. I mean, that's pretty much how everybody on this team got here, right? The opportunity to ask people smarter than you a lot of questions without judgment. So that is, we just like, let's bake that into the process.
Yeah,
thank you.
And actually, just a couple more findings I want to throw out there, very much related to this. We did find in our survey in the AI impact report that review practices are tightening generally, not loosening. So more thorough code review, up to 35% from 26% last year. More monitoring, 28% up from 13% last year. Earlier quality checks, 27% up from 17% last year. So Dan, do you think this is kind of a cultural shift in terms of, review practices, or is it just a reaction to specific incidents?
Yeah, I think it's actually a cultural shift. It's in my mind, and this is not my analogy. I think Charity Majors mentioned this. I'm sure other people have thought about it. This is similar to the move from machine code to source code, right? The abstraction level is moving up, and that means that there'll still be some people sometimes who have to go look at source code the same way that there's still some people who use assembly and like do debugging at a lower level. It's a lot smaller. I also think AI code review and linter generation and those other things that are outside the actual creation of code is low-hanging fruit and easy to implement. So it doesn't surprise me that more people are doing this, because you can use AI, and if AI blows up or does something wrong, it doesn't affect production code, right? It's not getting shipped into prod or even to staging. It's scaffolding outside. So, and the last thing I'd say is I think that like using AI to generate deterministic code, like linters or other things like that, is a really good thing to do, because then you end up with the best of both worlds, right? You can use AI to accelerate the development of this code, and then you can run this code many, many times for much cheaper, to tie it back to that financial conversation we talked about.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. John, do you want to make a point just quickly before I look at the poll results? You're on mute, Jerome.
Sorry, computers are hard. Roger that. One of the things that we are seeing when it comes to this quality gates and the reviews is, I don't know if that's happening in Yahoo or Fusionoff for their CNS, but one of the things we're seeing is that we are seeing a lot of reviews are being gated more so, not just for the correctness and the quality, but also the robustness and the level of the coding architecture. It's doing a lot more of that, a lot more pushback on the AI generated code to ensure that it is human readable to a degree, right? Like, we don't need it to just be a bloated piece of, the hardest thing you can't read is going to make someone's eyes glaze over. One of my troops, their favorite tool they've been using with Claude is called Ponytail, and they've been having us put Ponytail on Ultra. And when we focus on that with our graph engineering processes, it ensures that essentially we are following like the harshest rules of don't repeat or dry and YANGI and all this stuff. So it's very fun to see people wanting to make sure that the code review is as explicit, or that the code is being added as explicit as possible when it comes to that. I'm actually enjoying the new level of work that we're doing.
Yeah. Great stuff. Thanks, Jerome. Okay, I'm just conscious of time. We've got a few minutes left, so I want to get to these poll questions and have a quick look at the results before we wrap up. So I'm going to share them now, so hopefully you can see them. But the first question we asked, how confident are you that your org is accurately measuring the impact of AI on engineering productivity? Top answer, 53% not confident. We're mostly going on anecdotes, followed by 35% who voted for somewhat confident, but the data is incomplete. 10% not measuring at all, only 2% very confident we have clear metrics. Tiffany, I come to you. Any thoughts on that? I mean, any surprise there? 53% not confident and going on anecdotes?
Hey, it tracks. Adoption went up really quickly and people are still figuring it out, and that's okay, right? Like, I think no matter what level you're at, maybe you're an engineer, maybe you're a lead engineer, maybe you're a manager, director, you can kind of take bits and pieces of it, see what works, what doesn't. We're very much in that space as well. I know for myself, like I mentioned, I'm looking at cost, quality, and um, cost, quality, and time to delivery, right? Like, and I hover between those three because I'm like, okay, this week we really, really need to get our quality up. Quality means, this thing specifically. And other times it's like, oh crap, finance is asking these questions or security is asking a lot of questions. Or like, oh, we have a lot of S bugs. It's like, okay, we got to focus on that now, right? And so just being able to take your team along with you is really important. Lean back on the skills that you already have. And
The balance.
yeah, it's a
Yeah.
balance.
Great stuff. Thanks, Tiffany. Question number two, which we said, which of these best describes how your organization currently measures AI's impact on engineering? Top answer, 47%. We haven't defined a consistent approach yet. Next top answer, 29% that went for delivery metrics like lead time, deployment frequency, cycle time. Third top answer, 14% output metrics, so PRs, lines of code, tokens used. 10% going for business outcomes, revenue, retention, customer impact. Dan, I'll come to you on those ones. Any thoughts on those findings? Any surprises, or is that what you would expect to see?
I mean, I think that we haven't done the top answer ties back to the previous poll question. Doesn't exactly surprise me. I think that I'm heartened by the fact that delivery metrics outweigh output metrics because I'm sure if you'd asked this poll question 6 months or a year ago, it would have been the other way around. And then finally, I would say I think if you ran this poll in a year or 2 years, you'd see business outcomes be way higher.
Hmm. Yeah, great point. Thanks, Dan. Quick look at question number three. We asked, when measuring AI's impact on engineering, do the principles, frameworks, and techniques you used in the past still apply? Top answer, 29%. Some apply, but AI introduces enough novelty that adjustments are needed. Not far behind, 22%. Yes, it's just another tool. 80% apiece for we didn't have defined measurements then, but are building them now. And it depends on what you're measuring. And 14% say no, it's changed the game. Jerome, anything you want to add on that? Do you think we've covered that off with regards to the changes to metrics, AI's impact on what's shifting and what used to work? What does it work now?
Yeah, AI. So I'm more of the it's just another tool camp, but I do see that there is enough novelty that you can add new metrics for it. But those metrics seem more vanity than anything. Because in the end, what matters is how much how much are we building? Let's get into production smoothly, cleanly, making our users happy, helping us maintain a product, and have a good quarter. Right? That is what matters in software. Like how much and how readable is this code, how many errors, how much is our product breaking on day to day. And the things that we had before are helping us right now. So the extra layers that are just AI specific are really just more making sure people aren't spending $10,000 in tokens in a week. The token maxing was the funniest 3 months of my life because I was like, I didn't know that people could spend that type of money in that type of time. I was shocked. There was one month I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to try to do this. And I couldn't figure it out. Like, there's just not enough work for me, just not enough things for me to do to reach $10,000 in a week. And I was like, that, I was like, I need to step my game up in engineering. Apparently, I'm not working on big enough, hard enough problems. Because Tiffany's laughing, but I'm like, I haven't done it. Have you been able to do it yet? So, I'm right.
No,
So a lot of
exactly.
these, so a lot of this token focused AI metrics, right? They're vanity metrics, and what we need to be focusing on is still the things that move the business, right? Software. When we're talking about software engineering, the concept of our business. That's the stuff that we need to be focused on: the delivery, the impact, the velocity, the improvement of our product, right? Like how many S1, Sev1 issues are making it to production? Has that gone down? Has that gone up? These are the things that matter, right? Everything else is just, you know, you get a new tool that makes it easy to fix and triage bugs. That doesn't mean that, I mean, the problem is that there was a bug, not the tool that helped you find the bug. So
Yeah, yeah. Great stuff. Thanks, Jerome. I think that's a really good note to kind of look to wrap things up on. So, yeah, a big thank you to all three of you. Thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I think it's one that we could talk about for a lot longer, but we only have the time that we have. Big thank you to our audience, of course, for joining us and for all of your comments and for taking part in the polls. Really appreciate it. Great to get your input and insight on this topic. As you can see, there's a message in the chat. There is a Slack channel you can go to when this webinar ends, where you can continue the conversation. So do feel free to go there if you want to. A big thank you to Fusion Auth as well for working with us to bring this webinar together. Obviously, like we've said, the AI impact report is coming out in just a few days. You can pre-register for it now. There's a link in the resources section, and you can also find it on the Lead Dev website. Dan, you and me are going to be presenting some findings at Lead Dev New York as well on the report. So if anyone here is attending New York or wants to attend New York, the tickets are still available. That's in 4 weeks' time. So I look forward to speaking with you, Dan. Dan, any last words before we sign off?
I just want to say I was heartened by that last poll result where 18% of people are starting to do the right thing that they should have done before. But AI is the thing that's driving them to do it. And anything that gets people doing the right thing is something I'm a fan of. So
Great stuff. Thanks, Dan. We will wrap it up there. Thanks, everyone. And we'll see you again soon. So thank you very much.